Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Kinda Opinionated Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Sharon, and today is very special because we interview the chair of the Cooney County Republican Central Committee, kind of a mouthful, Mr. Brent Regan. Thank you for being on the show today. I really do appreciate it. How's your
No
day
problem,
going?
Luke. Happy to be here. It's going pretty good. I hit off yesterday pretty well. I got a haircut finally, so that was a big event.
Yeah, I bet. I really need a haircut. All of them are full until June. I can't believe it. Oh, man.
I
So
know.
that's great to hear. Well, and if it's okay with you, let's get started. So the first question is, what do you do
Sure.
as the chairman of the Cooney County GOP or the Cooney County Republican Central Committee? What does that entail?
Well, my primary function there, it seems, is to herd cats. If you look at our bylaws, it says that the chairman is supposed to run the meetings, and there are other duties and responsibilities. But really, the most important, I think, thing that I do is to make sure the meetings run smoothly, make sure that everybody has their a fair shake at having to say what they have to say and to make their case. But when it comes down to actually doing things, the committee has to agree to that. A majority of the committeemen have to agree to that, and then that's what happens. So, as chairman, I'm more of just a guide and a facilitator, and then it's up to the committee to figure out exactly what they want to do at the end of the day.
So you're kind of like the organizer?
Yeah, I'll call the meetings. We have a regular meeting, which is every fourth Tuesday of the month. And I'll send out an agenda for items that committeemen have wanted to talk about if there's anything known under new business. And then I'll gavel in the meeting and we'll go through the roll call and the formalities of it, and then we'll go through the agenda item by item. And first item I'll call, maybe somebody has a resolution they want to introduce. So I'll give them the floor, they'll introduce a resolution, and then I'll call on people one at a time to debate the resolution. And then when everybody's done debating, I'll call for the vote. And, all those in favor say aye, opposed say nay, and we go through it like that. So I'm really if this were a rowing competition, I'd be the guy calling the pace. And all the heavy lifting is done by the precinct committeeman.
So here's just a question for me. What's the weirdest thing that you guys have ever had to vote on?
Oh, we've had a variety of resolutions that have come through that have been, wide-ranging, world affairs, foreign affairs kinds of thing. And there's actually been debate on the committee as to whether or not we should be even considering that as a local Republican Party. It might be a national, even an international issue. And so that's probably the strangest things that we've come across over the years. Most of it is pretty mundane. We talk about our parade, our Lincoln Day, which is our big fundraising dinner, and various events that we try to put on, the legislative updates where we hold a legislative town hall and invite legislators to come down during session and brief people. So that's really the bulk of the heavy lifting that we do.
Well, thank you for answering all my questions there. So moving on. So a couple of the very conservative people I've had on the show, some of them have said that they might see that this county might become blue in the next following years. Do you see that happening?
The demographics of Cooney County are changing because of people are moving here. It's a wonderful place to live. Don't tell anybody that. It's a wonderful place to live. And you get a lot of people that migrate here from other places that are looking for a better lifestyle, a cheaper lifestyle. To that, the demographics change. Whether or not it's going, full Democrat or not, I kind of doubt it. Right now, where I believe we're at 54% Republican of registered voters. Democrats are about 9 or 10% independents. And the independents tend to split about 50-50 between Democrats and Republicans. So the Republicans still have a significant majority in this county And so I really don't see it turning blue anytime soon because the Republican numbers have been climbing of late. So, the Republican Party offers public policy that we think is better for people. It enhances prosperity. It reduces the burden of government. We try to keep taxation low. And that's really what our platform is about, is giving the individual freedom and the power that they need over their lives, and to try and minimize government control and regulation wherever we can. And as a result of that, people tend to gravitate towards that who want that kind of thing.
Thank you for answering my question. And here's just a question I had when you were talking. So whenever I talk to anyone after the show, or even sometimes during the show, I ask them, why did they become, their party affiliation? Because, everybody has a story on why they became a Democrat, or why they became a Republican, or even a libertarian.
Sure.
So why did you become a Republican?
Well, it's interesting because I've been an entrepreneur. I've been making my own way through life. I sign both sides of all my paychecks. I've started a bunch of companies over the years, from robotics to avionics. I've invented new products, and my business right now is developing new products for other companies. In fact, the thing I'm just working on even today is a new kind of digital meter for an emergency ventilators for somebody has lung trouble, like with COVID-19. And so over the years, I have figured out what works and what doesn't work as far as the ability to be prosperous and successful. And there's certain rules that guide you to that. And then you look at the platforms of the two political parties, and the Republican platform is the one that best aligns with the things that I have found lead to prosperity. And my ability to conduct a business and to create jobs, and to and instead of having to worry about who gets how big a piece of the pie, I worry about making more pies for everyone. And so the Republican Party really lines up better with me. So I didn't become a Republican. I was me, and I found that the people in the Republican Party best align with what I have found to be true.
I like pie, so that's great. Thank you for answering my question. So this is one of the questions that I tried to ask during one of the Republican town halls, which I was invited to, but they didn't ask it. The question is, I've asked this question with some Republicans and Democrats off the show. Both of the people from each party had similar answers, just on different agendas. The question is, why is your party against abortion and not also against the death penalty? Vice versa for Democrats.
That's really a false comparison between the two of them. One is in an abortion, you're terminating a human life, and that the human life hasn't really done anything wrong to deserve that. In a death penalty case, you've got somebody who's had the full freedom of being able to walk around and make decisions for themselves, and they've made some really bad decisions to the extent that you can't tolerate having them in society because they're going around hurting other people. So I think it's a case of due process and innocence. Somebody who has been sentenced to death has gone through a due process, found guilty unanimously by a jury of their peers, and so there's quite a process that's involved there. On an abortion, it's one person's decision to terminate the life of another. I don't think they're comparable in any way.
Do you think that we have, as judges, or even anyone who makes that decision, do you think they have the authority? I mean, of course they have the authority in our stance, but do you think they should have the authority to take someone's life?
You mean for a death penalty or an abortion? Which
death
you're talking
penalty.
about?
Death penalty.
Well, I mean, that's what society has come to call that we need. That's the punishment, the ultimate punishment for somebody who has violated our most sacred pacts. So I'm, yeah, if we collectively decide that that can happen, then yes. You know, it's a tough question. In the case of abortion, you know, I compare it to, well, let me back up a second. We have we have a requirement to treat animals humanely, right? We have, you want to have humane treatment of animals. And why is that? I mean, you watch a nature show and there's no humane treatment of animals there. You'll have, you know, a wolf will hunt down you know, a baby elk and, you know, grab it by the throat and rip out its throat while it's still alive, and, you know, it's bleeding to death right then and there. And that's, you know, vicious. Nature is red in tooth and claw, as they say. And so there's no humanity in nature. The reason we have humane laws is so that we behave in a humane fashion for our own sake. You know, we want to be able to know that as a society we treat each other and animals and, you know, whatever we come across in a humane way for our sake, and not necessarily for the sake of the animal or anything else. And I'm concerned about a government that would allow the sanctioning of killing people who are weak and people who can't defend themselves for the sake of the convenience of people who are strong, and not because there was some process or due process or crime or anything like that. So I think as human beings, we've got an obligation to try and be as humane as possible. Now, I realize that there are situations, but an abortion is a medical procedure. And that should be up to a doctor and the patient, and that this is required, you know, under the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. And, you know, if the mother's life is in danger, if you're faced with some terrible decision like that, then, you know, that's up to the doctor and the patient to try and come to a resolution of that. But as a society, just saying, well, you know, it's okay to do it, I'm nervous about that, because I don't think government should encourage people to be able to kill other people at a whim.
Thank you for answering that question. So moving on to another question, do you feel as if the protests around the nation, there was a couple here, I believe, and in Boise, around the stay-at-home orders are necessary? Why or why not?
Okay, excellent question, by the way. Thank you for that. When news first came out about this novel coronavirus, right, and they had projections as to what it may be, you know, now there wasn't a lot of data, and when you don't have a lot of data, then the tolerance band is wide. The uncertainty band is very wide. So it could be that, oh, it's no big deal, and it could be really horrible. You know, millions of people dying in the streets, and you know, it's super infectious and transfers. So, you know, our politicians looked at the law, and they looked at, well, this is a really bad scenario. What can I do under the law to prevent that? We go into this, you know, our governor declared, essentially not declared martial law, but enacted martial law, and said everybody has to stay in their house. Now, that's not a quarantine. A quarantine is when you take people who are sick or have been exposed, likely been exposed, and you tell them to stay away from other people. When you tell everybody that they can't leave their house, that's house arrest. And so, but it's an extreme move, and it's one that we took. And now we're getting data which shows that the virality and the lethality of the virus is a tenth or less of what the original estimates projected it to be. And in the meantime, we're doing terrible damage to ourselves and our economy by this lockdown. You know, the number of suicides I heard reported was greater than the number of deaths from COVID-19. And we've done 3,400 COVID-19 tests in Kootenai County for people who were suspected of having it. These were people who were screened that either had symptoms or they were thought to be exposed. 34 of those, like 64 or 66, came back positive. So if people you suspect have it, you know, showing some symptoms, it's only 2%. So really, and those numbers are flat statewide. So we're doing this really extreme thing, and it doesn't seem to be justified. You know, if you have a pathogen, a virus that is new and present in the society, the only way really to deal with it is for some people to get it and develop an immunity. And by fighting off the virus, you develop this immunity. The reports, oh, you can get reinfected. I'm not buying that, because if you can get reinfected, then you would never lose the infection in the first place. You know, your immune system wouldn't be able to fight it off. And so what our leadership should have done is monitor the situation, and we want to be in a place where our hospital capacity is not overwhelmed. Okay, that everybody who needs hospitalization or a ventilator can get one, and that we aren't saturated. Okay, but you do want the virus to move as quickly through the population as possible with doing as little damage as possible. So people who are susceptible, people who have pre-existing conditions, people who are older and they may have emphysema or some other disease that compromises their lung function, those people should shelter. Those people should take precautions, wash their hands, sanitize, you know, all the things that everybody is being asked to do. Those people in particular should be doing it, and everybody else should be pretty much going about their business. And then if the hospital capacity starts to climb, you know, saturate, and we get to 25 or 30% of capacity, and it's doubling every, you know, 3 or 6 days, then, you know, the politicians should say, okay, we're going to close down bars and maybe restaurants and other places where a lot of people gather for a long period of time, and try to reduce the infection rate so that our hospitals can keep up with it and monitor that. And we want to be just, you know, below saturation so that we have beds for all the patients. And that way people are getting sick, but a lot of them are asymptomatic, and everybody's building immunity. And once you get to 40, 50, 60% of people that have had it and recovered, now you have herd immunity and the virus burns out. But what we've done now is we've gone into the super protected mode. Not enough people are getting it, so that it's there lurking. And as soon as we come out of hiding, it's going to strike, and there's going to be more cases. So, you know, every life is precious, and we need to do everything that we can to make sure that those people who are vulnerable and likely to can be protected. But understand that we're doing damage. We're driving people out of business. We're putting people on unemployment. We're causing higher rates of you know, domestic abuse and suicide and child abuse, because people are in this high stress situation, and it's a situation of our own making. So we got to find balance there. We have to make a rational decision for those two, and that's what we're looking for out of our politicians. And I wish they would, you know, they would appreciate that there's a lot of damage being done. So yeah, the protests are a reaction to that. And if government isn't responsive to the actual situation, then there's going to be protests. You know, there's a fascinating phenomenon, and it's called the wisdom of the herd. And what you do is, if you take a jar and you fill it full of jelly beans, okay, and you put the jar on a table and you ask 100 people to guess how many jelly beans are in that jar, nobody is probably going to guess the exact number. But if you take all the estimates, add them up, and take the average, you're going to find out that the average is remarkably close, within a couple of percent of the actual number of jelly beans in that jar. Because people individually don't know it, but collectively they've got an idea that of what's going on, and the average ends up being right. And I've done the experiment, actually, and it's fascinating, and it's a real head scratcher. But so people know what's going on average, you know. And if government is doing something, telling you something that isn't right, folks will know it. And that'll start to manifest people objecting and people protesting and people. So it's best for our elected officials to keep track of the general of the population and what's going on. I know, just, you know, the other day things started to relax a little bit. I finally went out and was able to have go out and have a meal at a restaurant, and that was really refreshing. I got a haircut, you know. So anything that we can do to get back to normal is going to help people, help relieve the stress being cooped up and start restarting the economy.
So, do you think the protests were necessary? It just doesn't make sense to me, like why they're protesting. They're protesting the government from the stay-at-home orders, but I mean, it can't be a stay-at-home orders because they're all out. They're like, it's not. I just don't get it. Why are they all outside and protesting together? I mean, what if one person had it? Couldn't it spread?
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, that's an interesting question as to, yeah, what if one person does have it? Then yes, it might spread, it might not. People are protesting because they have a deep belief that things aren't what the politicians are telling them it is. They're not matching reality. They're not seeing that is an extreme emergency and there's extreme peril, like the governor said in his proclamation, that our systems are saturated. The hospitals aren't saturated. Our emergency rooms aren't saturated. We've got the hospitals are seeing remarkably, they're laying off doctors, they're furloughing people. So our ability to cope with disease is not saturated. So the governor saying that it is something that you can say, wait a minute, I can look around and I see it isn't. That ain't true. And, some people will sit at home and be angry. Some people will complain to their friends. And some people will say, listen, I'm going to protest it. Let's go protest this. And they'll go outside and do it. And all that, I think at the end of the day, it's healthy. It's psychologically healthy because now they're going out and doing something about it. And they feel that they've done something about it. And they have. They've demonstrated that they don't agree with the situation. Now, early on, and if this thing had been as bad as everybody had forecast, my wife has received a transplant a number of years ago, and she's immunocompromised, and I wouldn't want to threaten her, and we sheltered and stayed away from people and did all the hand washing and that in order to protect her. But even she's saying, my wife says that, listen, if I'm immunocompromised and I have to take extra precautions, I'll do that. I'll stay home. I'll wear a mask. I'll wash my hands. But I don't want anybody else to feel that they have to do that for me. That it isn't your responsibility to do anything to protect my health. That's my responsibility. And she's a person that's immunocompromised. So, I'll take her word on it.
Thank you for answering that question. So moving on to, we brought this up in the beginning, but I thought we should probably bring it up again. So our county has about doubled since 1991 in population. How do you feel about the growth of our county, like right now?
Well, it's that double-edged sword. If you've got a nice place to live, don't be surprised if other people want to live here too. And, I've seen the traffic go from near nothing to now it's, down Highway 95. It's a mess. There's lots of people running around, especially in the summertime, that, campers and motorhomes and all kinds of stuff. And that's a function of having a nice place to live. So, the only thing that stays the same is change. And, do I wish it was, nice and quiet and sleepy like it was back 20, 30 years ago? Sure, of course. That's one of the things. But you can't really blame people for wanting to live in a beautiful place like you do. So it's up to our elected officials, our county commissioners, the mayors in the 14 municipalities that are in Kootenai County to plan for the growth and to plan for the change. Too often they try to plan the change, and that ends up having problems because you can't. One person or a couple elected officials aren't nearly as smart as all the people that are moving here or that live here. So, I wish it wasn't that way, but it is, and it's not likely to change anytime soon. We're going to continue to have growth, and so we got to try and put our heads together and come up with solutions to accommodate it.
I completely agree. On that one. And thank you for that answer. So moving on to another question. This question is from one of the listeners at home. They ask you, the Republican Central Committee don't endorse candidates before the primary, correct?
That's correct.
Well, you are also the chair of the Idaho Freedom Foundation. They publish a freedom score for Idaho lawmakers. Is this a
Yes.
conflict of interest?
No, not at all. The Idaho Freedom Index is actually it's a metric. Now, let me back up. What happens is for every bill that's considered in the Idaho legislature, the staff at the Idaho Freedom Foundation goes through that bill and measures it on 12 different metrics. Does it grow government? Does it increase taxes? Does it increase regulation? Does it take something that's in the private sector and move it into the government sector? And each of those metrics, you get a score of +1 or -1 or 0 if it's neutral. Okay, so every bill gets some kind of a score, +3, -2, or whatever. And then the legislators that vote on that bill get that score. And so what it does over time is it tells you if big government, regulation, and higher taxes. Because every politician out there will tell you that they're the most conservative politician. Every person that runs for office will say, but when they actually get to Boise, sometimes they vote differently. And so the Freedom Index is a neutral metric of how they actually vote. There's no policy guide that goes with that. There's no, the president of the Idaho Freedom Foundation or the chairman likes this bill, so it gets a higher score. No, it's all very simply with these metrics. All the information is on the website. There was an article in the newspaper that, I went there, I couldn't find it. It's right on the front page. Not only the metric, but how it's calculated and who does the calculating, and every bit of it is right there. Yeah, so the IFF system is just a way for people to evaluate the politicians, and it's a yardstick that they can use as part of their decisions. But at the end of the day, it's up to the voter to decide.
Well, thank you for answering that question. So, okay, so this might be the most important question in political history. This question will determine if Idaho stays red. There's clearly one dominant flavor of Pop-Tarts. Now, that collectively millions of thousands of billions of people have all agreed that this Pop-Tart flavor is the best. Now, what is that Pop-Tart?
Wow. Okay, that's deep. Let me think about it a second here. What is, you think about America, right? And what do you think about mom and apple pie? So you got to know that apple is a quintessential flavor of America. But, okay, what did George Washington do? He cut down the cherry tree. So cherry is a fundamental component of America. So now we've got, I don't know that there's rhubarb or raspberry or anything that you associate with America, but we've got the great debate between apple and cherry, and which one of those two would be the greatest flavor of all. And I'm telling you, that is a tough one. It's almost a coin flip for me because I like them both, but I tend to like apples a little bit better. I like apple fritters, so I might bend that way.
No, come on, man. I had hope. I had hope. You were this close. You were this close. It was cherry. Oh my gosh. I guess.
We're all doomed. Oh, the humanity.
Oh, yeah. The Democrats also got it wrong. So now we're just going to be the libertarian state. Come on, man. It's going to be.
Well, you got to give me points for at least being in the ballpark here. Come on. Yes. I wasn't going after some crazy flavor like kale or something like that. Come on.
I mean, at least you didn't say brown sugar. That would have been.
No.
You would have been out of here.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Well.
Didn't mean to disappoint you.
Well, I'm very disappointed in you and everything. I'm so sad. Well, I really do appreciate you being on the podcast today. I really appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed this episode of the Kinda Opinionated podcast, subscribe, like, do all of that stuff. And don't be like Mr. Regan and like Apple Pop-Tarts. Come on. Thank you for being on the podcast today. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, it was great fun. Anytime, Luke. Anytime.
Okay.
You're a good guy.
Well, until next time, guys. Goodbye.
Bye.
I don't know why you wanna treat me this way.